and a heartfelt namaste. I, Anuradha, would like to thank all of you for liking and subscribing to our YouTube and Spotify channels. In case you haven't subscribed to the Spotify channel, please do, so that you can listen to all the videos at one go at one place. Today, we're going to talk about the transit of Jupiter in retrograde from Satbhisha Nakshatra, Charan 1, Pada 1 to Dhanishtha Nakshatra in Capricorn in the second pada of Dhanishtha. So as it moves into Dhanishtha Nakshatra, this Jupiter will be giving us different views. It will be teaching us different things. But first, the basics. What happens when a planet is retrograde? When a planet is retrograding, it is on a way of retracing its steps so that it can look out for things that it has not been able to deliver in its direct transit, spot those areas where it can work better, and regroup, reevaluate these things so that it can rework those areas out. Now, when a benefic is retrograde or becomes retrograde in transit, its ability to give more increases. As if a malefic is retrograde, it can also give strong results when passing through malefic points. Now, Jupiter, we know, is benefic power, is excellence. So its excellence is increased, but it also depends on the quality of work that it is going to do for you, depending on the house it is retrograding for you. If its ability to give more to you is increasing in the 6th house, it could increase your workload. It could increase some of your health issues, or it could make you move towards better health issues. So that is also one thing that we need to keep in mind. Again, the nakshatra that it is moving in. Satbhisha is a nakshatra of control. Satbhisha is also a nakshatra which talks about being direct, being focused, and being punctual. And it also talks about the ability to be on time in all spheres of life and a great part of observance. Jupiter as a planet is said to be a Nyayadhish or a jurisprudence, the ability to be very jurisdictic and to give right kind of evidence or right kind of answers or right path to be shown to others can be given to Jupiter, because Jupiter is also the lord of the 9th house of jurisprudence, jury, lawyers in the Kalpurusha Kundali. The 12th house is also of the Kalpurusha Kundali is also owned by Jupiter. Jupiter talks about your ability to be to let go and find happiness in giving. In this retrograde Jupiter, this times in Satbhisha says that control your giving and know how to be happy in giving, because Satbhisha also is a very resourceful nakshatra, giving you the ability to be a strong, resourceful person and knowing where to use your resources carefully, because this retrograde Jupiter, as I have mentioned in many of my videos on retrograde Jupiter, is the one that feels happy even with little. So making do with the circumstances that you have and having a control over your finance is something that this Satbhisha Nakshatra very clearly with the retrograde Jupiter shows to all of us. Then we move on to Dhanishtha, where Jupiter will keep retrograding till it comes to a standstill, or it comes to a point of being stationary in the sign of Makar or Capricorn, and then it will go direct again and move towards, finally, towards Aquarius. So when it is moving towards Capricorn, or it is also moving in from the 4th pada of Dhanishtha, as it moves into the 1st pada of Dhanishtha, one very beautiful thing that you can see is we will be retracing our business and financial decisions and finding out whether we have done anything good in there. Where are the block necks that we can see and what we can do to that? Because Dhanishtha is also all about taking responsibility for your actions, being responsible for others around you, and also it's about money and our wishes, our ability of what we can get. So what you aim to get, Jupiter says, I will give, probably when I will be direct again. But you need to iron out all those places that you want. And moreover, let's not forget, it's the 11th house of the natural zodiac. It talks about your basically planets here have the ability to give you to fulfill your wishes and your desires. Jupiter, being the best amongst the ones to give, along with Venus, gives this in spades. But for that, we have to be very careful about what we want to wish. And do we really need that? Should be the question, because this can also lead us to certain problems when Jupiter would move into Satbhisha. But that is for when we talk about a direct Jupiter finally moving into Aquarius. Points that we need to really work on is control and internal control in Satbhisha. When Jupiter moves into Dhanishtha, taking responsibility for your finances and your partner's finances also, and being very smart in the sense covering and protecting people around us, because Jupiter also gives protection. It is the main protective planet, if we can say so. So with this standard, let us begin with seeing what happens for every Lagna when Jupiter is transiting through your Lagna and these 4 padas of 2 different nakshatras. For the Aries, when Jupiter transits into when Jupiter starts retrograding from Satbhisha first pad, then it is a very strong time for you to think about your organizational values and your fundamental values also as such. Where are we lacking in certain values? Are there certain values that can actually be let go of and can be worked on at a very grassroots level, and can we get something new and better out of it? Please do go into an introspection in that area. As Jupiter moves into Dhanishtha for you, it will tell you that there are many areas that you need to be strong about. If you want to climb up in life, there are areas you need to think about your finances, and your sadhana would also need to grow, because if you have to grow tall, your roots also should be spreading far and wide. So that would also be an area where it can be taught. Anybody interested in taking up finances from any company to increase their base, you should at this time, instead of just going directly for the finances, write down what you want, write down what you see is important. And then when we talk about the amount that we need, see if there is anything that you can cut out, you can let go of, see the bare minimum that you need, compare it with the high point, and then go for asking for finances. It'll do you good. And you can do that asking for finances or going into financial restructurization when Jupiter moves into your 3rd and 2nd pad of Dhanishtha. More so in the 2nd pad of Dhanishtha, you can file for asking for in the company for finances. I know this is a long wait, but that would be worth every bit of it. When Jupiter would be moving into your 3rd path in retrogression of Dhanishtha, it would mean that your public image would also need certain amount of restructurization. How you put yourself on a pedestal also needs to be taken care of. Moreover, your 2nd child or your 3rd child could also, if we have a 3rd child, then the 3rd child could also be needing a lot of attention. And this is a good time to bring about certain changes in their habit patterns. It will go a long way for you, because when Jupiter is retrograde, it's easy to imprint certain values in people easily. I always have a disclaimer for all the Lagnas: don't start on something very new. Exception, if you're not doing something which has already been on the radar, then if you want to open a company, if you want to open a shop, if you want to go in for a new Grah Pravesh, these things are not advisable to do during the Jupiter retrograde period. Grah Pravesh is because then whatever you go, however you stay, you will be happy. But company and anything financial which needs to be done should be done before Jupiter retrogrades, or if you can wait for that time period after Jupiter gets direct, is the right time for it. When Jupiter is stationary, if you file in the papers, especially when it is stationary on its way back to being on its track or being margi or direct, that is again a good time. For the Taurus Lagna, Jupiter transits from your 10th house to the 9th house. Again, the 10th house is the house of the business, and the 9th house is the house of restructuration of that business or change in the fundamental qualities, just so because the daily routine that you follow with your business. 9th house is tradition. 10th house is new business, new organization. So there needs to be a change in your daily routine of your business. There's a need to be a change. 9th house is a negation of your 10th house. So there is a need to understand why you're undergoing all those problems or the principles. And that transformation, that very idea that puts a thought in your mind, can help you turn things in a better direction, which will eventually lead to understanding your partnerships with people, because Dhanishtha also talks about your partner. So it will lead you to understanding and giving the due to your partners and understanding a lot in depth about them. Consequently, you can do your work in a better manner, because then when Jupiter would be moving into the third pada of Dhanishtha, then you would be able to do your work better and understand how to earn money, not just through your partners, but also on your own. And as Jupiter would come to a stationary point in the second half of your, in the second pada of your Dhanishtha Nakshatra, this Jupiter gives you an ability to be very focused on your own intelligence, to rely on your decisions, to be very sure of your abilities, any mantras that you want to do, any intellectual work that you want to study on, or for that matter, for students going in for higher education, because the 9th house is also the house of higher education. You need to do deep research in that area. When you would be able to understand, pinpoint certain elements that you are happy with, understanding with, taking your own responsibility. The moment this Jupiter turns direct, when you focus on all these points and very clear and have done the entire research with your own good self, then it is a very good probability that you can move ahead. We now move on to the Gemini Rashi. For the Gemini Lagna people, this is happening in your 9th house and 8th house. And 9th house is your worship. 9th house is also your way of understanding things. 9th house is your way of doing, it is also the bhagya of marriage. And 9th house is also your children's education. 9th house is also your guru. And 8th house for you, it is also the house of change, transformation. It is also the house of sadhana for you. It is also the house of legacies for you. And it is also the house of unearned money, sudden happenings for you. So when Jupiter is transiting in these two houses for you in a retrograde fashion, it is first asking you, as it moves from Satbhisha, that the control that you show towards your spouse, or the strictness that you have over your children, needs to be relaxed a little. Is it all right to be that strict? It also means that your second child could need certain reformations, or he or she could also be needed to teach or to learn in a different manner. So this is a good time when you can put your child onto a different track of studying. As Jupiter moves into your fourth pada in the Dhanishtha Nakshatra, it is a time to understand your employees well. It is a time to evaluate your competitors and then take any financial decisions. When Jupiter is retrograding in your Dhanishtha Nakshatra in the 9th house, it is also telling you to be very fair and square. Get into a habit of being correct, or rather finding out what is right and wrong and then taking a call. Then when we talk about Jupiter retrograding to your third path, in such a case, this retrograding Jupiter talks about your ability to assess situations. It is also telling you that there are certain pujas or there are certain things, daily practices, nitya karmas that you do, which could be modified, which could do with certain, leaving certain things aside, or which could be expanded internally, but would not need, there's no need to be put a show of it in front of others. You could also be going into your own self introspection. This is a good time because when 9 and 10, 8th houses actually work in a retrogradation phase, you would be wanting to find out the meaning of why you're doing certain things in your daily life. Are they worth it? Are they really required for you? And then when Jupiter would move into your 8th house, as we connect the 8th house and Jupiter of your chart, it would mean that there can be upheaval in your work. There can be changes. You may want to bring about those changes because internally you may not be very happy with what's happening on the outside, or you could show certain amount of passiveness to what's happening on the outside. In that case, you will realize that there is a change that you are craving for, and that change is essential. And when it finally comes to a standstill or a stationary at 28 degrees in Capricorn, in that case, you will be looking forward to making those changes within you, accepting those changes, because it would make you very peaceful and graceful also, or ready to accept grace, especially from the point of view of emotions, because 8th house is also your emotional house. It's a water house, and it will also, when you're at peace with your finance, because it's also about your 10th lord. Jupiter as your 10th lord talks about your financial security also. When you're peaceful about that, you can move into the 9th house, you can follow a certain structure, and you can be very good at that. Now for the Cancer Lagna. For the Cancer Lagna, this entire thing is about your 6th house, 6th lord, 9th lord, retrograding from the 8th house to the 7th house. The 8th house is a change and transformation. And the 7th house is the house where you get a platform, you get a place where you can put up your image. The 6th house talks about the hard work that you're doing. So the 6th house, and connecting the 6th house to your 8th house, it can be well said that there's a chance that you would be missing out some unknown elements, some unknown areas, which can later be an obstacle. It's a good time for you to see and check out these obstacles, especially in your work field, which later on can escalate into big problems, because Satbhisha is all about control. And so it's a good time to take stock and to do a lot of control over your work. As Jupiter moves into your Dhanishtha Nakshatra, 4th pada, it talks about your ability to make money. And it talks about, because the 8th house is also a Panfar house, it's also a house of unearned income or sudden income. So this is also a time when you could be making certain money for your children, or it could be some money that can come to you in form of the insurance money, a provident fund, FD that you've done could have matured with a good interest. All these things can be seen. And it is also your foresightedness with money that can give you a good yield for you, because the 8th house is unearned money, as I said before. When Jupiter would move into your 3rd pada, and that is the time when you can give a good thought for your home. The 8th house is also the home that you buy. In case you're interested in buying a house, in case you're interested in expanding your home, this is a good time to decide what kind of a home that you want to expand on, or what are the areas in your home that you want to expand on, because 9th house shows a status of yours, or the home that you have built, which is a lot bigger and very beautiful. So all these things, when we connect, we can understand that this is a time of introspection on these areas. Finally, when Jupiter gets stationary in the 2nd pada of the chart of the Dhanishtha Nakshatra for you, this is a good time for you to get on to making new friends. It is a good time to start new partnerships with the mind that what is the amount of money that you want to invest, because the 8th house is also other people's money. When Jupiter will move into your 8th house, it would talk about those things, which we will be doing a video on a later date. But now is the time to assess all these things. find out, write them down. Jupiter is also understanding and writing and getting a budget, because Jupiter, when retrograde, gives us a budget. So if you can make a budget on those grounds, you will be doing good, because 8,000 Jupiter also has a connection of money. Very beautiful one. Now let us move on to the Leo Lagna. For the Leo Lagna, Jupiter, which is the lord of your fifth house. Again, fifth house will talk about finance. Fifth house talks about children, which is the house of Jupiter for you itself. So that is a beautiful place. It will see that the way you work with your children, the way, because seventh house is again a public platform. Seventh house is interaction with your children. Also, for you, the way you speak or the way your children speak, there could be a need to modulate conversations between you and your children. There could also be a need that you understand how to approach a subject with your children on a public platform, so that it gives you a great yield. It is also a house where you put your finances on a platform, or you help your spouse to invest certain amount of finances, get a business partner, so that you can also do crowdfunding. If you want to do crowdfunding, which is also the fifth house for you, when Jupiter would be moving into the retrograding into your third house, into your fourth pada or the third pada, that would be a great place to develop a plan of crowdfunding for those people who want to do that. And when Jupiter is in your fourth pada or the third pada, that is also a good place for understanding travel and tourism industry, or working, or for those children who want to study, who want to change their methods of studying, and who want to understand things differently, or who want to change their streams. Then those children, because this is also the time when the children who have just passed class 11, who are just gone into college, they might realize that they may not be wanting to go in a particular direction, especially Leo Lagna people, or as we go down, we will be seeing that for which other Lagna it can be applicable. So those people can use this opportunity and time to change their streams, assess it, and move ahead. Jupiter is also higher education for that matter. And when Jupiter gets stationary in your fifth house, in your sixth house, in that case, it is a good time to evaluate your health and your mental well-being, because it would be connecting the eighth house also with the sixth house for you. In that case, when you are talking about the ability to foresee trouble, ability to know how to handle trouble, and to be happy during that phase also, because a retrograde Jupiter generally brings in a lot of sense of contentment. Understanding that you are able to approach a problem and weed it out is a possibility that you can see in the Jupiter third pad, second pad, sorry. And another point that you need to understand is that is a place where you should not be getting into any legal battle, especially with your partners. Please don't do that. Let it out. Let this period work out. And when Jupiter moves into your seventh house as the eighth lord, that would be a good time to work on that legal battle. As of now, it is a time when you can actually make a plan how to cut people off or how to work them out of the system. That is a good time. I'm sorry for saying that, but this is what it says. Plan it out in this period and execute when Jupiter moves into Aquarius. Virgo Lagna people, it is a time when Jupiter moves from your sixth house to the seventh house, transiting the nakshatras of Satbhisha and also moving into Dhanishtha in a retrograde manner. Satbhisha is all about control. As I've always been saying, it is also about being perfect. It is also about being or whatever watchful. This internal, when Jupiter is getting into a retrograde mode, all these things internalize for you, because the fourth lord of happiness and seventh lord of a public platform. So you are aspecting, or you are getting all these things on a inside mode And when Jupiter is in Satbhisha for you, retrograding to the first pad, it talks about your safety and your security also, because sixth house is also obstacles. And Jupiter is the planet that gives you safety and security. You may be feeling safe and secure, but you need to sharpen those instincts and keep a watchful eye. It is also a time when your family or your home that you're working on could need a little bit of renovation, because it is sixth. The sixth house is the third from the fourth. So the renovation at home can also happen. And when Jupiter would move into the Dhanishtha Nakshatra, Dhanishtha is all about money, and sixth house is also about finance. So you can very well understand where your finance is coming out. Even I remember for the Virgo Lagna, people I had said in my Saturn video that this is a good time with the Saturn retrograding in your fifth house. Check out where and what kind of finance, because it's moving into the Shravan Nakshatra. It's retrograding in Shravan Nakshatra, which has got a lot to do with finance. So this is a time when you need to focus on your finance. Two planets, big planets, retrograding, your financial system needs to be undergoing a change or needs to be reevaluated and restructured. Again, as it would be, so you need to be open to ideas. You need to know that there's certain things that you can do and be open to change. And when Jupiter finally becomes direct in your in your second pada, in that case of Dhanishtha, in that case, it is a time when you would come to certain decisions about your own self, about finance, about learning, about children also. And when you take those decisions, first house and yourself, because Jupiter would be aspecting your first house, so yourself and the fifth house would definitely give you a very strong sense of confidence so that you can move ahead. When it moves to your second house, you have a sound self of confidence, you have a good health, and you have a very sharp power of discrimination, seeing what is right and what is wrong, because the fifth house is also giving you that power. But the need is self-internalization and restructurization of your finances and being able to communicate well with your children, like the Leo Lagna. Now we move ahead with the Libra. For the Libra Lagna people, it is very important that you, as it moves from Satbhisha in the fifth house for you to the fourth house, you pay good attention to your children and your cousins and your siblings also, because they are the areas in life that need a certain amount of change and control for you. And the way you interact with your children at this point will become very essential in the coming years, because by the time Jupiter comes back again at this point and starts retracing itself or going in a retrograde motion, 12 years would have passed. So this is a strong phase where you can actually, you can put in certain restrictions, certain boundaries, which will be helpful for them on the long run. Then as Jupiter would move into your fourth path of Dhanishtha, it would be a good place for you to put in certain value systems also, and also to learn certain new things, because learning always pays. And this is the time when you're learning a few things which are practical, it will give you a good for those who are on their path of a job or career. If you choose practical subjects, this, when Jupiter moves into your fifth house, will give you a good organizational post on a later date, when it finally moves into Aquarius for you. And as it retrogrades in the third path, this is a time when you would want to be very secure, you would want to be very safe with the happenings around you. You would want to see the amount of discipline you can get, and it would also mean that you need to be sure of your own self. There's times when we are always self-doubting whether we can do it or not. And with the Libra Lagna people, they have many pros and cons attached to it. Many times you make a mistakes, and that gives us a false out whether we will be able to do it or not. Jupiter retrograde tells you that you have the ability. It's just your way of thinking and be different from others, need not be wrong. And when Jupiter is in the fifth house for you, retrograding, it tells you that your out-of-box thought process can go a long way in making you a successful person. Document all these thoughts and see the changes that you are understanding. Again, don't start something new, but document it, internalize it, and when Jupiter goes direct in October, that's the time to put the things into action, because that time Jupiter is ready to give you the fruits. Finally, Jupiter gets direct in the second charan for you in the fourth house. Family, security, finances, all over again for you. Need a lot of time, and you need to spend that time if you don't want to make mistakes and don't want to change things in a wrong manner for you. Also, this is Jupiter. Jupiter expands. So while it moves finally into the fifth house for you, hope that it does not make the wrong choices. So you need to internalize this energy and be happy and content with the family you have and the security you have. Jupiter will then grace you with much more when it moves into your fifth house. We're talking about Scorpio Lagna now. For the Scorpio Lagna, the Jupiter is a very good planet because it is the lord of the second and the fifth houses. It joins the money houses for you. And as it is retrograding, another thing I would say is, if Jupiter is retrograde in your chart by any chance, for the Scorpio Lagna people or for the Aquarius Lagna people also, then it's a very good thing. We'll see why. As for the Scorpio Lagna people, because it's the 2 and 5 houses, houses of money, houses of wealth, houses of honor, and if it is retrograde in your chart, please make the most out of it. You, when others will not be getting that, no matter how hard they try, will not be able to achieve certain successes, you're sure to do that because you come with a distinct ability different from others in your chart already, because Jupiter is already retrograde in your chart. Now, if it happens to be retrograde while it is in your in transit for you, and that too in your fourth house, your ability to connect with the masses increases profoundly. Let's not forget that it is in transit creating a yoga, Rajkar yoga for you, because it's the fifth lord in the fourth house, and as it transits for you in the third house, it will tell you that there are opportunities waiting to be unraveled by you. Hold on to that opportunities and in fact grab them by the neck and take use of these opportunities. Financially, because it's the fifth lord in the fourth house, there can be an opening for you in the public sector. Take that pace up. Again, it can be a need to readjust your homes, expansion of your homes, or you for one can feel that yes, I have quite a big home and I want to let go a portion of it, or I want to release a portion of it. So hold on to that thought. Let Jupiter get direct. Don't take immediate actions. But yes, if Jupiter is having a strong change in its impact on your psyche and asking you to think things differently and value money in a different manner, because it is also connecting your third house and your fifth house. So you're seeing money from a different way. For those who are interested in writing, go ahead and write, because Jupiter is the second lord. You can get money, you can, your thoughts, which is again the third house and the fifth house for you, and your speech articulation could be very good, and it could be internalized, and those internal thoughts would come out as the writings for you. Do that, you will be successful, and you could be able to publish a book if you continue doing that writing in a year or two's time. As we move on for the Sagittarius Lagna. For the Sagittarius Lagna, it is your Lagna Lord, which is retrograde in the third house and moving towards the second house. Third house is valor. Third house is change of home. So you are having distinct thoughts about changing your home, restructurizing your home to get more money out of it, as Jupiter would be moving into the fourth path of the Lagna, fourth path of the Dhanishtha Nakshatra, as would it would move into the second part of third part of Dhanishtha Nakshatra. You would find a way out of earning more from the real estate or these things, because third house again is agency. So if you want to take on agencies, and you might be thinking very strongly about taking on agencies, and being in partnerships with people to yield much more, because this third Jupiter also talks about your seventh house. You might be viewing your marriage in a different light and might be wanting to bring about a change in all these things. As I said, this Jupiter is a very strong and individualistic kind of an energy, because it is a internalized form of energy. This Jupiter does not allow you to do any work, but it tells you to understand the fundamentals and then document them either in your mind, or if your third house is very strong, and as Jupiter for you people at least is moving in the third house and the second house, write things down. If you feel there's a strong need to let go, to change, which you will feel that it'll work itself out, in that case change is inevitable and it will do you a lot good, but then do document. And as Jupiter moves into your second house, finance and work would again need restructuring. What is not required, what is being superfluous to your finances and is eating into your income needs to be cut out and let go of. Again, document it and work on it very strongly when Jupiter turns direct. We are talking about the Capricorn Lagna now. For the Capricorn Lagna people, it is a very strong place because Jupiter for you is now going to move from your second house to your first house. When Jupiter moves from the second house in Satbhisha to the third pada, or the second pada in the Lagna, in that case, it is telling you that you need to be very strong on your value system. Second house is value system. The Lagna is your self, and Dhanishtha is taking responsibility before you have the ability to earn that kind of money or to aim for that kind of money. In simple words, as even Shravana is moving into your over your Lagna, Saturn is moving over your Lagna Lord is retrograding. These factors very clearly tell you that before you start earning, or before you start earning good money, there is a need to be responsible, and that goes for from the young to the middle-aged people, because you could be moving on to the new levels. But as Jupiter moves into your second house, finally in Aquarius in October, or into your third house a year later, where it would give you new beginnings, because it would be a third lord, you need to bring about certain amount of discipline. Saturn also, when it would move into your second house, it would tell you that only very moral values and your ethics are the ones that will help you gain more in life. So this is the good time for you to put your things in a day-to-day manner in the right place, because as I said earlier, it's Saturn in Shravana, which is all about day-to-day life and day-to-day work. And this Jupiter also gives you an ability to restructure and to regularize your day-to-day work and become more disciplined. And in Dhanishtha, as it would move in Dhanishtha, it will give you an ability to be more work-oriented, basically, and your fundamental values about work, about the social systems are undergoing a lot of upheaval and change. Observe them, bring them into your psyche, and then start implementing them one by one. They will give you the results as you want. We move on to the Aquarius Lagna. For the Aquarius Lagna, a good phase for you when Jupiter is retrograding to the 12th and will be coming back. When it retrogrades over the self as a planet of value, when it retrogrades over the self, you might be having certain doubts about your own value, but you would be happy from it. So these doubts can be worked out better if you have the ability to control your feelings or your fears, because this is a time when, as it retrogrades, it would also be under the aspect of Rahu. So if you can undergo and control a certain amount of fear for your own self, you would be happy there. And in the Dhanishtha Nakshatra, it is telling you that yes, you have plentiful as it retrogrades. You're feeling that there is enough that I have. Suddenly, when it would go direct, you would realize that you need more finance and you have been spending more than you could afford. So this is one area you need to check your finance and don't feel very complacent very soon. Keep working, keep trotting on. And then as you move ahead, you will see that the monies that you have made have been enough, but don't go into a mode of complacency. And this is the planet of value. This is going to give you a good time when it moves into Aquarius. So don't forget to watch my channel on Jupiter moving into Aquarius for the Aquarius Lagna people. As we talk about the 12th house of the natural zodiac, or the 12th Lagna, Pisces. For the Pisces Lagna people, your Lagna Lord is moving from the 12th house to the 11th house. If I can say so in one sentence, I would say have a discipline over your finances. Sadbhish and control over the of moving over Dhanishtha is very strongly stating that there is a need to bring about a change in the way you finance your institute, or you look into the finances of your company. And as you undergo a fundamental change, undergo fundamental rules of business, changes in those rules will yield good results. But if you do not stop your partners from overspending, if you do not stop your colleagues, or if you take loans without a head or a tail, then that can put you in a soup. Otherwise, your abilities to garner more funds, your need to spend more on advertisements, make sure that you are very perfect on deciding as to what kind of avenues of spending you need to make in terms of your finance, and restructurize them. When Jupiter transits into Pisces for you, that will be one of the best years for you, because it is the Kendra Lord moving into the Kendra, and that too a Vargottama Kendra, not Vargottama, but incidentally it would be Digbali on the Lagna for you. So Lagnesh Digbali would be very strong and very good period for you. This is what we have on retrogression of Jupiter. Jupiter, again, I repeat, is an internalization energy when it is retrograding, giving you an ability to judge situations better and make the most of it. Judge it, write it down, internalize that energy and work on it when Jupiter goes direct. Till we meet with you again, stay tuned. Till then, thank you.
Please hit the bell icon for fresh updates. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the videos, and please subscribe to our channel.